أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I need to get it closer probably. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Sure, take your time. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start, inshallah. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Just wanted to recap quickly of what we spoke about last week in terms of the relationships matter series. Today is the second lecture or talk about this series. The last week was about the pillars of healthy relationship. We talked about what's a healthy relationship, the foundation, the building blocks of that are make up the relationship that would lay on top of the pillars of a healthy relationship, and also types of conflicts. And we talked about the skills is going to be, or the foundations are the values and the principles in a relationship between two people, and the pillars of the relationship are the columns that keep the building together. And the skills are the outside, what people see from the building, and the columns not necessarily are seen easily. They're just maybe hidden inside the building, not easily seen or not obvious. So people, when they first see us in a relationship, they only tend to the outside, the walls, the colors, and that's what I resemble as skills. So we talked about the foundation is the belief systems, the building blocks are the skills, and we spoke about that there are no pillars in a sense for a relationship, but for a healthy relationship there's only one needed pillar, and the most important pillar is to authentically commit and engage in the conflicts, engage in good times, in bad times, and that's the commitment. And authentic, we said about sincere, and the commitment is really to not to make it conditional, and we spoke about the engagement is being in it, not delegating it to someone else, or not necessarily taking the appropriate measures to move forward in resolving any. So today's talk the title of today's talk is how to shield against hindering forces. So what do we need to do? What are the skills? So this is kind of like what in the outside of the building, what are the skills that would help us to shield ourselves or shield the relationship specifically from hindering forces. So if we were to look at a building, so the hindering forces can be a change of weather, change of heat. The changing of cold and heat can also change the structure of the wall. The color can be impacted. So all of these things can wear off. So how do we shield our building, the relationship that we spoke about? This is a metaphor. I made a metaphor of it as the building, and in order for us to shield ourselves from the relationship from being impacted from the changing environment, it's really to focus on the skills and to always refresh skills and to make them excuse me, and to make them always up to date and at best, just like what we do. I mean, when we were not born, we know how to walk, right? We learned how to. What's the first thing we learned to do? Before crawling, we started to roll, right? Exactly. So rolling is the first thing we learned how to do, and the journey was to walk. And many people, when it comes down to fixing relationship, they want to run before even know how to roll. So the first thing we do is to roll, and when we roll, what do? We are really building the muscles of the core of our body. That's going to help us later on to develop from rolling to crawling. So then when we crawl, the core muscle is there, so it can help us crawl. And little by little we start walking, but when we walk, we stumble, we fall, and then we eventually walk, and then we run. So all of that process, the only thing that we have to keep us going, regardless how many times we hit our heads against the table, how many times we fall, how many times we hurt ourselves, we continue to do that because we are committed and engaged in the experience of learning how to walk or how to run. So the same thing when it comes down to relationship. Building the skill does need that skill, does need that commitment. So to build the skill, you're not going to master it at the same time. Same thing when we learn how to do math and how to do science, and we don't get it from the first time. We stumble. Our commitment to finish our degree or to finish whatever year of our to finish our academic year, that commitment is going to help us to go through the difficulties and to go through the hindering forces that would shield all these things from achieving our goal. So there are many things that we can do. I listed here, I don't know, like 8, but I'm going to only talk about one because of the time. And there are tons of that. I just listed 8 out of many actually. So one of the things that help us shield from hindering forces, and I mentioned earlier about the winds, but sometimes can be the hindering force can be like a typhoon, or not a typhoon. A typhoon is on the water, but could be a hurricane. A hurricane is so strong it can rip off the walls. It's so painful in a relationship to keep against what you might call it, a hurricane. So therefore, the environment around us can be soft, can be manageable, and sometimes can be unbearable. That we don't know how to maintain the building, the relationship, to maintain it together. And that's some of the things that we do, is building the skills to really help us shield ourselves from such strong impacts or strong threats to our relationships. So one of the things is that we can do is understand our thoughts and our emotions. One thing that we can do is know our behavior. How do we behave when we are in such situations? Manage our thoughts and emotions. And also there is something called the emotional intelligence. There is an IQ and there is an EQ. EQ is emotional intelligence. Also, how to deal with difficult people. So many times find in the family, the parents having problems, for example, with a child, or vice versa. They say the child is difficult to deal with. And sometimes the other way around, the child would say, my father or my mother is difficult, I don't know how to deal with. So dealing with difficult people. And sometimes also in business, a partner would find his partner or her partner in business partner difficult to deal with. How to, after the fact, after the contract is done, after the business already started, then they find out that this person is not easy to deal with. So the skill of how to deal with difficult people is going to help you keep that relationship. And I mentioned yesterday that, the last talk on last Sunday, that in terms of relationships, sometimes people think that relationship ends after divorce. But if there are children, the relationship, and also there are rights for the wives after the divorce. So you can keep the relationship healthy. It's going to be from a different level or a different angle. The relationship is going to differ. However, it can still be healthy for both of you. Other things that we can do is to understand empathy. A lot of people say you need to be empathetic. What is empathy? What is that? We need to understand it in order for us to implement it in our relationships. Also building resilience. That's one of the things that also helps us to hinder or to shield ourselves from the hindering forces. And also to develop emotional intelligence within the family, to be an influence, to bring that skill to the family. So you're not the only one, however, you are also helping the family to build that skill together. So there are a lot more that I can list, but I'm just going to stop here. And I'm going to be focusing today on one subject, which is building resilience. How to build resilience against these, because sometimes we cannot stop conflicts. We cannot stop these environments changing. It's out of our control. We can only manage what we can control. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. We have been talking about this verse for quite some time. Every time I bring this verse, because this verse is so important, and a lot of things that sometimes overlooked, and when it comes down to ourselves. So we need to be fair to ourselves. So if we can't control the environment around us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this environment around us, and He knows that we can handle it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the law, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold anyone accountable anything for what is or what he or she can bear. So if we are in any environment or any situation or any conflict, know for sure that you can handle it if you want to. And that's the change, and that's the choice you need to make. And that goes back to the last week, is the commitment to be engaged, authentic and committed engagement. So what is resilience? Anybody would like to guess what is resilience? How do you define resilience? Any guess? You can guess because I can correct you. It's okay if you make mistakes. I'll help you. This is to discuss and to share knowledge. Resistance? Resilience is resistance. Got it. Thank you. What are the thoughts? I cannot speak. I cannot hear you if you whisper. I'm sorry? Flexibility. Resilience is flexibility. Got it. Thank you. What else? Any thoughts? What could resilience mean? So resilience is a skill, it's a capacity, it's a capability that would allow us to recover. So it's a capability to allow us to recover quickly when we are facing difficulties. So it's a skill, it's a capability that allow us to recover quickly, because we don't want it to drag for too long. We want it to be able to address it and recover quickly when we are faced with difficulties or challenges. So that's the general definition of resilience. So in order for us to build resilience, we need to understand ourselves. The most important part about ourselves that we need to understand is self-image. How do we see ourselves? That's one of the most important things that we need to focus on. Of course, if I want to cover the skill of resiliency, it's going to take workshop over a couple of days. Workshop, so I would say 16 to 20 hours just to build that skill. But this is a talk, just share some of the thoughts. So in order for us to build that resiliency, the first thing we need to look at, and we need to understand our self-image. How do we see ourselves? Another point that I will be talking about, so understanding the self-image. Another thing is that when we think about either I'm good or bad, either I'm a good father or I'm a bad father. This kind of mindset puts us on the defense. I will explain more. So how do we handle that? So learning how to handle that, it helps us increase our resiliency. Another thing is that we do is hide and attack. We hide things and we attack back. And other things, how we deal with, how do we deal with conflicts, or how do we deal with challenges and difficulties, is that we tend to ignore it, not address it, just distant from the solution. We don't want to address it. And at the end, I will be talking more about how to handle the danger of attacking, or the danger that is coming against ourselves. So for example, if your child comes to you and said, assuming that the child didn't come directly from school that day, and would say something like, I didn't come directly home. I didn't come home directly from school because I didn't think you cared about me. If the child says that to the mother or the father, how do you think they would respond? If you are a father or mother that your child came and told you, you ask him, how come you're late? Why didn't you come to school or to home after school? It's like, well, I didn't come to home after school because I didn't think you cared about me. So I thought I'll just wander around. So if the child says that to the parent, I don't know, what do you guys think? What would the parents... Ask him, why does he think like that? Very good. Very good. So that's one of the things we do, is that we ask, why, what makes you think that way? I would also recommend, when it comes to relationship, we need not to use the word why, because why is more like an investigative. You like being investigated. So what caused you? So language is very important. What caused you to think that way? What happened to make you think that way? So we are saying why, but we're very specific to what is it that we're looking for. So what else would the parent? What else would a parent do when the child tell him, oh, I didn't think you cared about me? What would the parent, what's another thing, another thought? What would be happening? They would sometimes parents like, of course I care about you. And they would start scolding the child, maybe not to do that again, or don't say that. That's very hurtful. You hurt mommy, you hurt daddy. Don't say these things. They would just shove it aside. They wouldn't even discuss that. That the child just expressed something that he strongly believes. They just force it on the child not to talk. So it's very important, and it is very important, is before we say anything, to be mindful of what's happening inside us. What is our self is saying to ourselves? What's the thought is saying to us about what the child mentioned? So what is the hidden message that would be interpreted by the parent? I didn't care about the child because the child doesn't see me as a good parent. He doesn't see me as a caring person. I'm an uncaring person. So these things, if that's, these are the thoughts, some of the thoughts that could happen inside a parent unconsciously. What happens if we take this 2 seconds of thought, and maybe sometimes it's much faster than a second, the thought comes and we make a decision less than a second, and then we say. So we just want to make that second to last a little longer. You see, people who watch TV, dramas and stuff like that, you see the two people talk, and there is no pause because it's scripted. And inside the script is just all the message and all the directions of what the director needs to go, because they don't think, they just say it. And when we watch these things, we like, oh, we need to do the same thing. But that's very wrong. It's okay to pause in a conversation and just contemplate, reflect on what's happening inside you, and on what the child said to you. Because I'm thinking maybe the child is saying, I'm not a good dad. I never showed him love. I never showed him that I cared. I'm an uncaring person. So I take that as a judgment. And then that puts me on the defense. Then I tell him, no, don't think like that. I mean, that's common. I'm not saying all of the parents do that. But some parents do that. And if the parent just came from work and stressed from work, they're probably not going to be able to pause and take that time. And that's why the skill takes effort, and we make mistakes until it has to be done, regardless whether you're coming from a stressful work, a day at work, or whatever. When it comes down to addressing a conflict or an issue, these steps, it really helps resilience in how to manage these kind of thoughts that can hinder the relationship. So some of the things that we can ask ourselves when we hear these kind of criticism or these judgments coming to us, what are the thoughts that we think to ourselves? When the child... Oh, before I move forward, I just want to mention something. So I said, like, sometimes it takes a second. We think and decide, and we just talk about what we want, how we want to respond. That second, if we were to magnify it to micro or milliseconds, you will find a lot of thoughts there that has been automatically done in our past. From our experience, we learned if I hear this, I say that. So we don't reflect on that a lot. So our subconscious really puts us in autopilot and makes us respond automatically based on what we have been doing in the past. So what we have been doing in the past could be coming from parents, from other relationships or friends that we met. It could be also by watching TVs or movies or whatever. So these are things that we absorb that the right thing to respond in a relationship. And that's why we say that second, make it longer. Make it 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It's still a pause, but it's a healthy pause because you are reflecting. Some of the things you ask yourself, what am I thinking to myself? What are these words of the child are saying about me? How am I interpreting these words? And how does this statement from my child shape my self-image? How does it match or mismatch to the self-image I had for me? Because if I see myself as a good father, as a caring father, and when I hear my son telling me, you know what, I didn't think you cared, what's the first thing comes to me? Emotionally, I'm disappointed. Maybe I'm angry. Maybe not acknowledged for my careness for all the years but he's just talking about a specific things, and our mind just goes beyond. So we're not able to maintain the thoughts and the emotions. That's why I said that second we need to expand it, and if we expand it longer, then we will be able to put things in perspective. So these are some of the questions that we would ask to help us get an understanding of what's happening inside us before we say. And I loved your answer. You would ask him, what makes you think that I didn't care? Or where did that come from? That's a very good question. But you're a very experienced mother, and I'm sure you're very aware of that. A lot of people are not. A lot of people, they just... and this kind of skill is for the people who really having difficulties maintaining relationship, and that kind of skill helps them to maintain a healthy communication with the child. So if my self-image that I am a caring father and my child is telling me I didn't think you cared, there's a conflict within me that is happening inside me. I'm not addressing the conflict with the child, but actually I'm addressing the conflict inside me. So I have to push the child to meet my self-image. That can be a source of problems if we're not able to. If we do that, then that's not basically helping us in resilience, in building resilience. So the ability to reflect about what the child is saying is going to help us to increase our resilience level. So this mismatch in my self-image and the child's perspective of me, of my self-image, is going to cause a lot of intense emotions for me. And these feelings are going to be becoming overwhelming. They're going to make it impossible for me to stay on the subject. If that's, or maybe that's what we can call it, a triggering point. I'm triggered because of this mismatch in my image not matching the child's image. So for this reason, this is why we need to address the feelings about self-image. And that would help us, if we are able to maintain the emotions and the thoughts, that would help us to carry on with a conversation. Yes? Very good question. So the only thing that I have with this kind of questions is a yes or no answer. So asking a what or where did it come from, tell me more, is more open. It allows the child to open up. Yeah, but when we say, is there anything else that say, he would say no. Then there's not much we can do. But when we say, what else? Or tell me more. Or where did this come from? What happened that caused you to say these things? I'm sorry? Yeah, exactly. That thought didn't just come up. But when we are in denial, it's like, oh, this kid is just making it up. But we're not present. We're stuck with the conflict inside us. So I'm saying exactly. So the idea is to remove that, to be aware that there's a conflict inside us and just put it aside and focus on the child and have open questions. What, where, how, tell me more. That's a very powerful thing. It's like, oh, tell me more. And just wait for them to answer. Oh, no, that kid may say, oh, no, I don't want to talk. It's like, oh, I'm really interested. I want to learn. You just engage. That's the commitment to engagement. You need to be engaged. That's like, but if the child is pressing and pushing back, it's like, okay, I respect that you don't want to talk about it now. I would like you to know that I'm here, I'm available to hear and listen from you. And I promise you, I will not be upset. If you change your mind, come back. Is it okay if I check with you like in an hour from now? So that's something also to make the child really sees your sincerity, the authenticity. We talked about authentic, committed engagement. So the authenticity is to show the child we are really authentic about our interest to be engaged in this conversation. The child might say no because he's scared. Last time he opened up, you scolded him. So it's like, I don't want to deal with that again. So to change that positively, you need to allow the child to have the space and to feel secure, and also allow him to come back. So making that promise to them, I promise you that I will not judge, and I will listen. Let me know if you change your mind. That allows the child. Is it okay if I check with you in an hour? And that allows you also to initiate this again. That's very helpful for the child, because sometimes the child gets stuck. It's like, oh, I missed my opportunity. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to upset them. But if you allow them, if you ask this question, can I check with you in an hour from now, or after you pray, or after dinner or something, then you would allow that window for you to initiate it again. Any other questions or thoughts? So where does self-image come from? Just for the sake of time, I'm going to answer my own questions. So self-image comes from assumptions of ourselves. We assume that we are certain things that we're not necessarily not, but we might be or we might not be. But it's an assumption. I'm a great engineer. I'm a great speaker. I'm a good person. I'm a good Muslim. But that's our assumption of ourselves. Another source of self-image comes from people mentioning things to us. Oh, I trust you. You're a very good friend. But not every time every person tells us things, it means it's accurate, because maybe they're just trying to be nice. Maybe they're just not comfortable to tell you that you're really not good at something. They're just like, no, you're okay. I really like your company. But then they text their friends, I can't stand this person. So not every feedback we get from people is accurate. But sometimes what happens is that we hear it, we believe it. So that builds the self-image. Oh, like the father wants to cook a meal, and everybody's like, oh, we love your cooking, and everybody's like, be nice. You don't want to be criticizing the father's meal or the mother's meal, whomever doesn't know how to cook. So they think that they're a great chef all of a sudden. So that's a self-image that is developed from feedback from around us. And also some also develop the self-image from previous experiences. Sometimes that previous experience can be exaggerated. Like I did a small project and then I become a project manager. I'm a great project manager, but it's just a small assignment or a small task that I dealt with. but then I believe that I see myself as a project manager. And these are some of the examples of where self-image come from. So, right? Overconfidence, yes. And that's a reason, that's one of the reasons why we need the self-image, because it gives us self-esteem. So self-image is very important to maintain our self-esteem. So we need to build that. Now the thing, and the most important thing is that if self-image is exaggerated or is not authentic, quote unquote, it's not realistic, that's where things go south. Inside us, the conflicts inside us really increase. So telling ourselves, I'm a good Muslim, I'm a good parent, I care about my friends, I'm committed to my family, and all these things, these are the beliefs that we have about ourselves, and this is how we see ourselves. Now the thing that can be negative about self-image is that I'm not worthy, I can't do anything right, nobody loves me, I have no friends, I'm a bad friend. All these things are negative that impacts self-esteem. It almost destroys the self-esteem. So another purpose of the of the self-image I mentioned earlier about enables us to have the self-esteem, and it really feeds the self-esteem. If it's too much, it's overconfidence, like what the Shaykh is saying. So it gives us overconfidence, and that's quite dangerous. What we call in the science of relationship, if I may use that, we call it being a fraud. You're living a fraud. You're delusional in a sense, not a clinical, psychologically delusional, but you're delusional. You think of yourself that you're much more than who you are. That can be because of many reasons. Some of it I mentioned before: the feedback and past experiences, exaggerated past experiences. So another reason why we need to have that self-image that we give to ourselves is also to gain an acknowledgement from other people, because that's important for us. When the parents say, you are a great, when they tell the child, you're such a great builder, they're building in the blocks and stuff, you're such a great builder. So that's an acknowledgement from the child. And there's a healthy way to do it with children. At what age is really important, because that changes at this a different age. And again, that's a different workshop that we can talk about children, parents with children, on how to manage their self-esteem. And so acknowledgement is very good. At a teenager also, or a tween, or 10 to 12, there is a specific need that they have. We need to be authentic when we give them the feedback, but we need to give them that feedback about their self-image, how we see them, but not exaggerated. So that's very important for our self-image. Also appreciation of others, and also having or acknowledging, knowing that we have some certain competences. You're really good with tools, or with cooking, or it doesn't have to be you're a great chef. It can be just an authentic feedback. So having that self-image, it allows us to believe that we are competent. We can do certain things. And so what happens with the negative self-image? Some people think of themselves like unworthy, not good. Some Muslims, unfortunately, they think that is how to present humbleness. That's how to humble yourself. Talk negative to yourself, and that's not healthy. That's not a good thing. That's not how we reach humbleness. Humbleness is not being arrogant, but doesn't mean you attack yourself. That you take the knowledge that Allah gave you, the capabilities that Allah gave you, the gifts that Allah gave you, to negate it and just not acknowledge it. That's actually destroys the self-image. And many of the youth that I work with is that, and even individuals, adults, they struggle with balancing between humbleness and negatively talking to ourselves, having a negative image to themselves. So this brings us to the next thing that we do that hinders resilience. So we wanted to so in order for us to build resilience, we want to know what hinders it. So we talked about self-image, when it's exaggerated, when it's unauthentic, when it's negative. These things hinder the resilience. So we need to be mindful of who we are really based on reality, not imagination or being, delusional about ourselves. So the other one is the, giving either or. I'm either a good teacher or I'm a bad teacher. Having that mentality, having that mindset, it makes it impossible for people or for anybody. If I have that mentality, either I'm a good teacher or I'm a bad teacher, then it's going to be difficult to take any criticism. If I'm a teacher, what are the chances of me saying that I'm a bad teacher? Very low, because I'm a teacher. I've been doing it for 20 years, for 12 years, for 7 years. So I'm seeing myself as a good teacher. So if I see myself either I'm a good teacher or I'm a bad teacher, any criticism it comes to me, I see it as I'm a bad teacher. And then I get defensive. It's like, no. So that's what I'm going to be talking about now. So this kind of mindset, when we see things either or, it puts us on the defense to attack criticism. Because why is this important? Because criticism can be a very positive feedback for us. If we are able to hear the message, not how it's delivered, but the message. Because the message can be delivered in very mean, inappropriate, impolite, right? If we filter all that out, because we might think we need to make ourselves believe that this person is not aware or not learned how to, communicate nicely. But I want to be focusing on what he or she is saying, regardless of their impoliteness, regardless of their crossing boundaries, whatever the case might be, or even if they are screaming and yelling. I want to listen to the message. That's a skill. Because what happens is if for example, a teenager comes and yelling at me because I'm an older person, I expect them to respect me. So if I have a trigger inside me, it's like, oh, I'm being disrespectful. No, I'm being disrespected. This child has no respect for me, so I'm stuck on what's inside me. But I'm not focusing and not engaging on what the child is telling me or the teenager is telling me. So being focused on the message, regardless how it's delivered, that's also a skill. It starts with understanding, what's inside us. If my self-image, I see myself, I'm a respected person in the community. I was like, whoa, I'm a respected person. This person is disrespecting me. I'm just going to go back. I'm going to say back things to correct that because he's causing this dissonance inside me. The image he's saying about me does not match the image that I have of about myself. So therefore, either I'm a good teacher or I'm a bad teacher, is going to make it very difficult for me to hear the feedback. For me, it's an opportunity to improve. When it comes down to criticism, the person who is criticizing doesn't mean they are always correct. Okay? But it's an opportunity for me to reflect and understand what they're saying, regardless how they say it. So, an example, a student comes to the teacher and says, you know what? Teacher, I was really disappointed when you didn't re-explain the lesson when I asked you to. I asked you to repeat the lesson and you didn't repeat it, and therefore I am disappointed. So what the teacher says, okay, I didn't repeat it. That means I really failed in the first time to explain it. That means I'm a bad teacher. And then the teacher, when this mismatch happens, the teacher is in a denial state. Like, no, I'm a good teacher. Like, I did repeat it. So they would just respond like, I did repeat the lesson. And they might add like, oh, you were not paying attention. Next time you need to pay attention. That's not going to help the child to learn. That's not going to help the child to come back again and tell you the feedback or give you criticism. So that's something to be mindful when we when we want to maintain a relationship. What's happening inside us? We do not want to be in a denial state. We don't want to get into that state at all. So we need to be mindful of what is really causing us to go to the denial state is because of my image, either I'm a good teacher or I'm a bad teacher. I will talk more, inshallah, towards the end on how to address all these. Another thing that when families dispute and emotions are very high, some people bury their feelings. Like, let's not talk about it. Bury it. I don't want to hear this again. From now on, we're gonna move with our lives without, as if nothing happened. Um, um, or they can, or some families, they would detach. They would they would detach themselves from the issue. They would say something like, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. Um, let's bury it, and I'm not part of this. I'm not part of this conflict. You guys figure it out. I don't want to be part of it. So they isolate themselves from the problem. And some also they generalize, and they start talking about solutions. They jump into fixing it without really addressing what is the problem, what's the emotion, what's the hurt that is causing all of this to happen. So burying it under the rug, isolating yourself from the problem, or just denying it and just come up with a solution, it's not going to stick. I can almost assure you the solution will not stick. So what some families tend to do when they attach themselves, they attack back, and that causes more fractures in the pillars and the connection of the whole building of the relationship. So this is one of the things that are unhealthy some families do in addressing conflicts within the family, or people do in general when it comes down to addressing issues or conflicts in relationships. So another thing that we do that impacts resilience is that when we sense danger about our self-image, we attack back. We attack back to defend ourselves. So some person's like, I say something, it's like, no, that's not how it happened. It's like, oh, you're calling me a liar? So that after that statement, you don't expect it to go positive. It's gonna just go down spiral after that. So I'm sensing that they are attacking my self-image as a trustworthy person. I don't like that, so I attack. So, oh, you're calling me a liar, but he didn't or she didn't. But that's causing that. That statement is not coming out of nowhere. It's not coming out of vacant, but that's coming from an internal struggle or conflict that is within me as I spoke those words. So running away from the problem, what I mentioned earlier is that being detached, it comes from fear of what might happen next. I mean, that's one reason why people walk away from it, because they don't want it to go out of control. They don't want to make it worse. But actually, they're not helping. They're not helping the relationship because they are disattaching themselves. There is no engagement. So therefore, a pillar is gone. So they say, like, let's forget about it and move on. Let's just kiss and make up. Just say sorry and move on. Yes, it's good. It's important to do that, but it needs to be addressed. The emotions, the thoughts, the misunderstanding, all that needs to be addressed. And the fear is valid because a lot of people don't know how to handle these situations. That's why they need to be building that skill. They can attend workshops, they can go to counseling, they can go to a friend who is, or someone, they can come to talk to a community leader to help them how to manage these conflicts. It can be a one-on-one, it can be a class, or it can be anything, but they need to have that commitment. So that commitment is going to help them to get off their couch, go to a class, sign up for it, and attend every day, or go and ask someone who is knowledgeable about it. So now this is going to be the positive way. How do we really handle all of that? How can we build the resilience? So, so to have a correct self-image about ourselves, we need to list down the assumptions that influenced our perception of ourselves. We need to really sit down, and if I say I'm a good teacher, I need to put down what are the assumptions that I'm making. What did people say about me as a good teacher? Who said it? At what situation? And kind of like really take time to think, pause and reflect on where did this perception about me as a good teacher come from. Now, this is important to have it. So this is a deeper understanding of where this self-image. We're not saying change it. We just want you to understand it more. Why is that important? Because the more we understand it, the deeper we understand the self-image we have, the better we will be able to handle emotions when we are under attack. For example, if I gave for the example I mentioned earlier about the student asking the teacher to repeat the point, but she didn't. So that in that situation, the teacher, for example, listed her assumptions that she's a good teacher because her students give her good feedback, they get good marks, this and that. The parents gave her really good feedback. The principal, gave her good feedback. She sees herself because she explains the topic very well. Now she has built that deeper understanding of her self-image. When the child tells her, you know what, I'm disappointed that you didn't repeat it. So for her to understand her self-image deeper, that would help her to understand that his comments is not necessarily judging her capability. It's just maybe she didn't listen to the child. So it's a listening skill, or not able to communicate to the child how to that she doesn't have the time to repeat it because the class time is really limited. So can I talk to you about it after class? So it was not necessarily that the child is really questioning her capability, but she can reflect on, you know what, I should have listened to the child. Maybe I wasn't understanding the child. Maybe I was under a lot of stress because the class finishes in 10 minutes and I have to rush out to pick up my other son and child and all that stuff. So internally the teacher was stressed about other things that has nothing to do with, but because of this automatic response that unconsciously we build, she went automatically under attack. She felt under attack, or her capabilities are under attack, so therefore she denied it and she pushed back. So when we get a deeper understanding of our self-image, and that's very true for everything, when we get a deeper understanding of our behavior, our thoughts, our beliefs, that helps us to prevent this automatic or auto react to any situation, because it helps us to pause and think, like, you know what, I know myself very well, and this area I'm very good at. I'm confident that I'm good at it, but you know what, there's something going on maybe I didn't think about, so this is an opportunity to learn more. So we are not an auto response situation, so we will be able to get a deeper understanding of who we are. So instead of either or, we need to say to ourselves, instead of assuming that you're either a good teacher or a bad teacher, a good mother or a bad mother, a good parent or a bad parent, and so on and so forth, is that we need to think of ourselves that we are a mixture of positives and negatives. It can be both. It can be you're a good teacher and a bad teacher. You're a good teacher in certain things, but you're a bad teacher in certain other things. So we cannot be all positive, right? Just like when we talk about the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not pure negative. There's some good in it, right? So when somebody says something negative, it doesn't mean that you are totally negative. There's some good inside you, but it doesn't mean that you're always good. You're 100%. You're not perfect. So we need to get ourselves out of the, perfection. We are not perfect. So when we, have this mindset that I can be both, it allows me not to be on the defense automatically. So I can automatically respond, not be on the defense if I have that mindset. And that mindset doesn't come like, you know what, I'll just decide to have that mindset. It doesn't come that easy because the other mindset, either or, has been there for a very long time. So you need to put that commitment and effort to change that mindset. Any thoughts or comments so far? Have I lost anybody? Everybody's with me so far? Yeah. Yeah. They blame the teacher. Very likely, most of them, yeah, they blame the teacher. It's really, that's the skill that the teacher needs to have, is that they need to see it as an opportunity. So that feedback, it's a criticism. And you can call, what I call this, and I'm going to talk about this if I have time, it's called surprise criticism. Because the teacher might think like the child didn't put the effort, and she has her own, or he has his own understanding of why the child failed. But the parents have a different perspective. So when they meet the teacher, it's like, you're no good. What are you doing? What are you teaching? It's like, what do you mean? Your child is the only child that failed. All my others, I have 20. So that defense, so the teacher will be defensive. But if they really, focus on maintaining their relationship with the child and the parent, because what happens if the teacher is going to defend and attack? It's like, oh, your child is not doing it. Look, I have 20 other students. They're all good. They all passed except your son. So what does that tell them? Well, we are bad parents. So they're getting on the defense, and then this cycle is going to go back and forth. It's not going to happen, and probably the parents will take the child and take it to a different school. Now that's not good, because the teacher skill as a teacher, they also need to build the skill to maintain the relationship with the child and the parents. So that's an opportunity if the teacher is well trained. Actually, we did have a conference earlier this week for teachers in Shah Alam, talking to them about some of this stuff and how to build that kind of skill. Alhamdulillah, it was very, very successful. It was a 4-day conference, and for the teacher to have that skill is going to help them maintain a healthy relationship with the parents, and maybe will teach the parents how to be teachers at home or how to support the child. So as long as the teacher doesn't get stuck in the internal conflict, and that would cause or I should say, likely to causing an internal conflict with the parents, that will not go anywhere. You can imagine the conversation is going to end in like 2 minutes, or it's going to escalate to screaming after that. So if the teacher took it on as an opportunity to connect, so her commitment to that relationship with the parents is very important. So she needs to engage. And some of the questions that was mentioned, like what you mentioned earlier, is like, so tell me more. What's causing that? Where is this coming from? What makes you think that I'm not doing my job? So they were like, yeah, so they don't have anything to say because they really don't know what you're doing as a teacher, right? So this allows this communication to continue in a healthy manner and really make it fruitful at the end of that conversation. Very good example. That's subhanallah. Good old days. That's why they call it the good old days. Yeah, subhanallah. So they take it as a responsibility. Hmm. Oh, mashallah, that's very good. There you go. Subhanallah. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's really what we want to bring back. That's why we encourage parents and teachers to bring these back. Relationship is the core of everything we do. If the relationship is not there, I mean, like there is an example. One shop was two traders, two shops next to each other. One person is selling vinegar. I'm sure you guys heard about it before. And the other shop is selling honey. And people are lining up in front of the shop that sells vinegar. They just want to buy vinegar. And the guy who's selling honey, no one's there. This went on and on, day after day, week after week, month after month. And then the seller, the guy with the honey, is like, went and talked to the owner of the shop of the vinegar. Is like, listen, I am selling honey, the sweetest thing on earth, that is the most healthiest, the natural. Is like, you're selling vinegar, and people are lining up in front of your shop, but no one's buying from my honey and buying your vinegar. What's your secret? He said, you're selling honey. He said, I'm selling vinegar. He said, I'm selling vinegar with a honey face. You're selling honey with a vinegar face. We can use that example. We can use that story to use like a honey relationship and a vinegar relationship. So you're selling, you're connecting with other people in a honey relationship, in a honey manner, in a very sweet manner. That impacts how the other person is going to be connected with you. So what blocks us from making that positive connection is inside us. It's really inside us. There's no one else to blame. It's just that us be mindful of what is triggering us to behave a certain way. And if we're mindful of that, have a deeper understanding where it came from, that would help us be ready when criticism comes, when conflict comes, when the environment changes around us. We need to keep that. This will help us improve our resilience. Accepting, so some people's like, they can say that, oh, I'm not, they can say I'm not perfect, but they're not accepting it. And that's a difference between saying it and accepting it. Accepting that you're not perfect is a milestone to be able to have that resilience in fixing problems. So these are mainly the skills that the mindset needs to be. It can be both. I can be a good and bad. I'm good in certain things because we're not perfect. And this is something we get a lot from people who want to, they deal with sins, for example. I was like, I'm a bad person. It's like, so why? It's like, oh, because I do this sin and I do that sin, I'm going to hell. It's like, wait a minute. So we talk to them and we have these sessions with them. And then at one point, they need to accept that they're not perfect. And they need to accept that there is a mercy. Allah's forgiveness is there. They cannot deny that. But they're so fixated on being perfect, it makes them, forget that Allah is the most forgiving. Sometimes even that it can be very, very serious, that they want to commit suicide just to handle the guilt that is inside them. And we go down to the really self-image and the thoughts that is going inside them. These talks will not help really, because it's a process that we go through. But these talks really helps people that, you know what, there are solutions out there. You're not alone. It does happen. Try it. If it didn't work out, reach out for the system. We talked about that last week. Reach out for someone around you in the system, your family. If your family not capable, reach out to the community leaders, community people who know. If not, go to professionals. because help is out there. It's just your commitment on improving yourself. You need to move forward. You need to move forward to help yourself. Imperfection, that it can be, you can be good and bad at the same time. Understand yourself, deeper understanding of yourself is also the things that we can build in ourselves to help us with our resiliency. So if I have time, I can talk a little bit about how to handle criticism. You have a question, brother?
Yes. Anis Ramli asks, how do you maintain resilience without compromising your Islamic values when trying to be adaptable as well?
When you're trying to?
Trying to be adaptable as well.
Adaptable?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So last week we talked about the foundation. The foundation is Islam. The foundation is the Islamic values and the system, the belief system. So the question is how to build resiliency without losing Islamic values, or what exactly?
It's not sure. It's just asking to build resilience without compromising the Islamic values.
Yeah. So it actually should go along. Building resiliency is part of being a Muslim. Because when I am building a self-image that is authentic, that I'm being sincere to Allah with what I can do or what I cannot do. So that's a combination of good and bad. So when it comes down to committing sins, I'm not saying accept the fact that you're doing sins and just continue doing it, but accept the fact that you're not perfect, that you will make mistakes. So there's a process on how to fix your sins, especially if there's a sin, for example, as addiction. Many addictions today, that either can be like smoking, can be pornography, can be drugs, can be a lot of things. A lot of people are addicted. And sometimes, you know what? It's very interesting. Some people are addicted to gossiping or backbiting. It's an addiction. They just love doing it. But they're not doing it out of, negative or evil thoughts or evil, objectives. They just love it. You did it for so long. If they didn't do it, they feel like they're missing something. I mean, that's an addiction. It's not something that you can say, yeah, you know what, that's who I am, Allah's forgiving, I'll just keep doing it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that you're not perfect, you commit sins, so accept the fact that you're not perfect. Now, excuse me. Now after we establish that, we need to work with the sins to reduce it and work on it to make it smaller and smaller, or less frequent and less frequent. So that's how we help maintaining resilience to maintain between resilience and being a good Muslim. Accepting the fact that, like for example, the Prophet ﷺ told us a hadith about the man who killed how many people? 99 people. And then he went and asked the worshipper, and what did he tell him? You're going to hell. So he killed him. So he killed 100 people. And then he went and asked a scholar. And what did the scholar say? You need to leave. He gave him an opportunity to get out of that environment. But sometimes that's what we need. If the hurricane is so heavy we cannot handle it, it's impacting our behavior, that we are behaving negatively, we really need to consider that as a solution. And then think, is it really the best solution? And then that's when you seek out guidance and advice from the scholar. From Sheikh Hussein here, you can reach out and seek advice from your scholar. And what happened to this man after killing 100 people? He died on the way to his destination, to the new village. He died. Did he go to heaven or did he go to hell? He went to heaven because he was committed to improve. He wasn't just asking people just for the sake of making himself feel better. He was authentic. He was engaged. He did make the steps. He did make the move. And he was committed. So he traveled. Even though he got sick, he kept on going. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from his mercy, made the land closer to his destination city or town, and therefore the angels took him to heaven. This is a very important hadith to understand it in these kind of sense. I say accept your imperfection, work on your problems, work on the sins, improve them. And as long as you are working on them, you are in the same journey as that man who killed 100 people. So you are in a journey as long as you're committed and engaged and authentic about it. You're doing it for the right reasons, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are going to continue with it. Whether you continue, whether you finish it before you die or not, that's not the problem. That shouldn't be the focus. We want to do that, but we want to focus on being committed every day in reducing the sin. I hope that I answered the question. I'm not sure, I can't get feedback online, but any other questions online? Okay. Do you want to open it for questions or comments, or do you want me to talk about how to handle criticism? I'm sorry? How to handle criticism. Okay. I'll just take her vote that presents everybody. So when we listen to criticism, I've seen it. I mean, sometimes we do a session and we allow the couples or the child and parent talk, and when the child, especially when the younger, criticizes the older, whether they're siblings, whether they're a couple, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't look pretty. The other person gets defensive. What I mentioned earlier, they get in denial. They're just being basically taken hostage by the internal conflicts. So what I say, what I recommend when it comes down to criticism, many of us know this. I just want to say it for the sake of sharing. Pause. Actually, one time when I was in the U.S., someone called me stupid, and this is before I even talked about any psychology back then. And because my cart, I was shopping and I had my cart a little bit, not straight. It was a little bit, so it's blocking him from coming. I was like, oh, you're so stupid. Pushed my cart away, and I said, why? I mean, back then I used to use why. I was like, why am I stupid? It's like, just because. It's like he had nothing to say. He had nothing to say. So I couldn't let that, upset me, or go fight the guy or punch him in the face because he called me stupid. Him calling me stupid, that's a criticism. So we need to be, in order for us to, this is a surprise criticism, right? I didn't even see it coming. And most of the time we are the weakest when it's a surprise criticism. We pause, we take a deep breath, and we do the following. Now, pause and taking deep breath is very important before you do the steps. So I mentioned about breathing. The imbalance of oxygen and carbon dioxide inside our body does cause us, or makes the triggering point much easier to happen. When we breathe, when we feed our body, mainly the brain, with enough oxygen, it will help us function much better. It helps us really to maintain a positive and stable mental state. So after you pause and take a deep breath, just be aware of the feelings that are happening inside you. Attacked, disrespected, all that. Put all these feelings and have them on a shelf. So there's like an imaginary shelf for feelings and a shelf for thoughts. Put them on a shelf for feelings and put them aside. Just be mindful in that. And in your mind, you really need to, sometimes it can be very painful, but just keep in mind what's going inside you, all these hurt feelings, just put them aside. Acknowledge them. Acknowledging them does really help, because feelings are there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let me pause before I say that. You don't see a cat, talking emotionally or having emotions in the sense that feeling disappointed that the other cat ate its food. It doesn't. It is like it comes to you and meows. We have a lot of cats at home, so I accept cats an example for us. So So we go to you and meow for more food. So it doesn't, I mean, there is, I mean, the emotions is mainly, I think, I personally believe that emotions are very specific to human being. That's what makes us a human being. So emotions are real, they are very strong. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us with this emotion. And it's a strength, actually. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these emotions inside us because it's a triggering point calling our attention to something. It's not necessarily to make you feel bad, but it's an internal trigger. It's an internal message that is calling you to do something about it. So therefore, be acknowledging it and just putting it aside. Don't ignore it. Just put it aside for now. We'll address it later. Just they call it pin. Put it in a pin. Acknowledge if the words were hurtful. Acknowledge that you are being hurt. Don't deny that. Don't think like, you know what, these words don't mean. No, just acknowledge that it's hurtful, because in the process is very important to acknowledge that. Acknowledge that it's getting you angry. Maybe your heartbeat is increasing. It's like, oh, I can't stand this guy anymore. Shut up. Or just so inside us, we just need to acknowledge that. I tell you a story just happened to me. I don't know, 3 weeks ago. I went to a doctor. I did a test on myself. Let me try to give you the exact numbers. I did a test on myself. I know that the doctor is going to check my blood pressure. So what I did was that I externalized anxiety. There's a process how we can do that. So the feeling anxiety, I made it as if it was sitting next to me, and I empowered it to talk to me. So anxiety, it started to talk. Oh, the doctor is going to do this, or this might happen to you, or you have this. And when they checked my blood pressure, it was 126/80. Little that I knew that they were coming back to check my blood pressure again. Now I was waiting for a good half hour, so they knew that it was not like I just came in. I was just sitting there, but I was just I was just playing with it. So I did that, and after they did it again, it was 142/90. It was normal, because after I came back, I put everything back to normal. I was able to acknowledge anxiety was out. I externalized it and I made it, tranquilized it. I acknowledged it and I just canceled it. So this experiment that I did it to myself, that was just something for me to share in my talks and my sessions, that emotions does impact our physical being. I was able to increase my blood pressure significantly for the nurse to do my blood pressure test twice, just in a matter of 5 minutes. So therefore, being mindful of our emotions and our body, I'm starting to get a headache from just listening to this criticism. Starting my heartbeat is acknowledging it and putting it aside, and basically label them as these are feelings, these are reactions to feelings. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. And just telling yourself that is going to help you maintain that physical status as well as your mental status. And the way that really helps the most to stabilize what's happening inside us is to look what's beyond that criticism. So you're putting yourself not just in the present state, but you're putting yourself in a state that, what can I gain out of this? So you are putting yourself in an anticipating state. You're really anticipating something positive. Regardless of what the person is saying, to you, you're putting a new meaning to that criticism. So instead of labeling it as criticism, you're really labeling it as an opportunity. So it's really important to make a clear difference between the message and how it's packaged. You need to differentiate between these two. And that's very important because you want to focus on the message. How it's packaged, how it's delivered, keep telling yourself that's what's causing maybe the internal triggers. Anger, he's not polite, he's too loud, he's talking, he's pushing me, he's doing this, he's putting the finger in my face. All of these are just triggering me. But what his message is saying is what I need to focus on. So focusing on the message is going to help you maintain your mental state and your physical state. And be mindful that this person might not be as skilled as you are on how to deliver feedback. So, that's part of the teaching of the Islam, right? I didn't come up with this. So Islam tells us to give our brothers and sisters excuses. So we tell excuses. It's not a learned person. The Prophet ﷺ, an Arabi, a person from the Bedouins, came and urinated in the masjid. All the Sahaba triggers, like, whoa, this is najis and it's unallowed, and they wanted to stop him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, what? It was very stable. Like, let him. So he understood it in a different way. And that's what we learn. The Prophet ﷺ was stable in his hijrah. He was in the ghar, in the cave. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr was nervous. The Prophet ﷺ was at peace. How was he able to maintain all that stability? You see, that stability is no doubt is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something also, a skill that we can also develop. And when we develop 10%, Allah will make it 50. Allah will help us because we are doing our part. If we reach 50, Allah will make it 100. He will give us the rest. He is able to give us that. But we need to put the effort to do our part to stay stable. Sometimes people think it's ignoring it being stable. But that's like the person who's criticizing and you're not listening. It's like, okay, I'll just think about it. But they didn't hear a word they said. So they missed out on an opportunity. So what I'm trying to say is that being mindful of the person that is telling you is not as skilled as you are to tell you a meaningful or valuable feedback. Next is that you don't need to disagree or agree with the person. And that's sometimes where feedback or criticism can go south, meaning can go bad. Is that when we give us like, I really don't know about that. I don't agree with it. It's like, you don't need to say that. Just take it. Just take the criticism and don't need to tell them anything. Just collect that information. And then you can ask, like what the sister was mentioning earlier, clarify, recap. So you're saying that when I did this, was that wrong? And when I did that, that was wrong. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Yes. Okay. Actually, subhanAllah, when you recap, you will notice that if they were screaming, the tone would reduce significantly. Just by recapping what they said. Because you are telling them that you were listening. Like, oh. So they are internally like, oh, I'm being listened to, I'm being respected, so I need to lower my voice. So you are telling them to lower your voice indirectly by just repeating or paraphrasing, but the best is really to summarize what they said. And at this point, and that's the authenticity where it comes is like we really sincerely want to understand. That's where it comes naturally and it comes sincere to the other person. That you are sincerely trying to understand. It's like, okay, so you're saying this and this and that. Did I hear you correctly? It's like, yes. Good. So that sincerity, even though you didn't say it, the other person would feel it. Sometimes what's really struggling at this point in a criticizing or feedback conversation is that we have this strong urge that we want to respond. Because if we're not mindful that internally our self-image is destroyed, we want to respond. We want to fix that image about this person, about us. It's like, whoa, I'm a good guy. You're telling me I'm a bad guy. So that's why do not listen to that urge. Do not respond to the criticism. And instead of that, is that you can ask for more clarifying questions. If you really didn't understand what he's saying, you want an example, you can ask him, can you tell me more about what you mean by that? And they would tell you more. So that's the sincerity of understanding. And you can end it by, you know, so before I talk about ending it, so just be mindful that this process, following the criticism with this process, you are gaining from it because you're getting information from the other person. Maybe you're hearing it for the first time, and that information can be true, can be also false, can be misunderstood. But we don't want to respond to that at the second. So at this point, you can say, clarifying questions or asking for examples. If there's anything else they would like to share with you, and you can say Jazakallah khair, or thank you for your feedback. I would like to take some time and think about it. Can I sit? You know, if you really want to, and that's the opportunity, because now you're listening, you're really thinking about it. Can we have a follow-up? Give me some time to think about it so I can respond and I can help work with you on this, because I wanna give you my. If you're interested, you just also make them feel that they are part of that decision. Very likely that they will appreciate your offer. Like, yeah, sure. So you reflect on it and then you call the person. Like, how about we just talk about it? Let's talk about it, about what we discussed last week. Can we meet over coffee or take Tariq? Let's talk about it. And then you would give them the authentic response. Like, well, I appreciate that. I see where you came from. But you really need to do your homework when you take that feedback. You need to get a deeper understanding where that person coming from. How does that trigger your, the anger and all that? And that's where you give them the positive feedback on how to give feedback. That's an opportunity to train the other person for giving a less constructive, not constructive. What's the word I'm thinking about? Confrontational. A less confrontational criticism. So it's to make it more constructive confrontation in a sense, not a negative confrontation, by giving him some feedback. But on the spot, he is maybe triggered way high. So therefore, being mindful, absorbing and collect as much information as possible is very important. Open the door for follow-ups. Can I reflect on this and give me some time to think about your criticism? And I would like to have a discussion with you on that. I want to learn more, or whatever the case. So open the door for follow-ups. So these are my humble opinions on how to handle criticism. I hope you find them helpful. There are two critical points that we need to be very mindful of. Is that we don't want to mix the message with how it's packaged, and we don't want to follow the urge of responding. We don't have to respond on the spot. So I will stop here. I would like to see if anybody has any feedback or comments or questions. I'm more than happy to discuss. I mean, feel free to disagree with me. That's why we're here to learn. So I'm open for suggestions on how to do criticism or other stuff that how to build resiliency. More than from everybody. Going once? Yes.
Aisha Abdullah asks, Assalamualaikum Ustaz. It takes a lot of experience to take criticism positively. How do you exercise this patience? Any examples from the Prophet? PBUH.
Peace be upon him. So can you repeat the beginning? I didn't understand the beginning.
It takes a lot of experience to take criticism positively. How do you exercise this patience?
Positively, yes.
Any examples from the Prophet?
The Prophet ﷺ, many examples. I just wanted to repeat the question first, just to make sure that I understood it correctly. So the question is that it takes a lot of experience. The question is saying that it takes a lot of experience to handle this positively. Right? Did I get you right?
To handle criticism.
Criticism positively. And if there are any examples from the Prophet ﷺ.
Yes.
Yes. So the examples are there. I'll mention a couple, inshallah. The examples are there, but from my limited knowledge, what the Prophet did was not put in a certain structure. It was not put for us in a step by step. Like for example, the Prophet at the time of the Prophet and the Prophet, he did math. He added and subtracted, and Sayyidina Ali was one of the best. Like he was, he gave a fatwa on inheritance in a matter of seconds. It was a really complicated situation about someone died and had children, and what's the percentage or the share or whatever. So the math, the execution, the calculation, all that existed there. So today's, the knowledge of psychology and the knowledge of how to deal with the internal selves, it really helps us to merge the two. Because what the Prophet ﷺ did, and I gave an example when the Bedouin came and urinated in the masjid, that's one example. But where does it say what the Prophet, what do we need to do step by step to help us mimic or come close to how the Prophet ﷺ handled that position? So we resort to knowledge of like psychology, and many scholars of psychology address that, the thoughts and mood, or the thoughts and emotions. Many scholars I mentioned in the earlier talks, like al-Balkhi, Ghazali, and many other scholars. From combining with these two and learning about the studies that was done by the West, and it's not theories really, it's just methodologies that are implemented on people, and they see the result is very high. The impact, the positive result is quite high. So following those steps helps us really to give us a general guidance on how to handle ourselves in different situations. One example, the Prophet ﷺ was pulled from his shirt, and he was accused of not being justice. One of the Sahaba pulled him, is like, where is my share? And he pulled him so hard that the hadith is saying that it left a mark on the Prophet's neck, alayhi salam. So how did the Prophet deal with it? He dealt with it very, very, he was very stable. He didn't get upset. So that's a criticism. It's like, you're not being fair. And the Prophet ﷺ addressed his needs and gave him his share. And it was a peaceful, you want to call it a confrontation from the, and then the Arabi or the Sahabi was very happy. So these examples are there. And you're absolutely correct. It does take energy and experience. So these things, just like I mentioned earlier about walking, but you can take an example about riding a bike or driving a car. When you first drove a car, maybe you were driving at in the highway, driving at 20 kilometers per hour. But now you're in the right lane and high beaming people to get out of your way. But we forget how we start sometimes. So it does take effort. It does take, as I mentioned, commitment, authentic, committed engagement. So that's what helps you to build that. And we can talk about the stories from the Prophet ﷺ and how he handled, and not only the Prophet ﷺ, also the Sahaba. um, many examples. But here we're talking about the how. We're not talking about what. How did the, what the Prophet did. We're talking about how you can follow. What do you need to do to allow yourself or to give yourself the ability to be stable when person criticizes you? Anybody would like to, Sheikh, would like to add to that? Sure, I'm here to learn from you as well. So. Is there a way to communicate with them? Did I answer the question? Can you communicate? Yeah. Okay. So for the person who asked online, if you feel that I did not answer your question, please let us know. I'm more than happy to address it. So hopefully they respond promptly. In the meantime, anybody has any thoughts or questions or anything they would like to add? So with the science of psychology and the science of the methods of counseling, it really helps to analyze the situation. Like I mentioned earlier in the talk, we take that 1 second and expand it, and we study everything that is going inside the mind. And for us to understand, that's a skill by itself. That's a knowledge, just like math, just like science. We learn it because we all do this. We are all human. I mean, it's just natural to do that. But if you want to change that, there is a method to change it by understanding these little things and just being mindful where they came from. If I have a certain perception about myself, my self-image, that I'm a generous person, I need to understand where that came from. It's like, oh, I'm generous only when it comes down to anything below 10 ringgit. I see myself generous, and just having that deeper understanding of what is that perception that I have about myself really helps us to accept criticism. But when we are exaggerating, because the Prophet ﷺ, he knew that he was the Prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him if he needed to be a king, he would have. If he needed to have to destroy the people of Qatif, of Taif, he would have destroyed. But he didn't want any of that. He knew that he was powerful, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving him. He was supported by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he didn't have any conflict inside him. He didn't have an exaggerated perception of who he is. That if we were to do the same thing, by being sincere to whom we are. The Prophet ﷺ said, I am a servant of Allah. He didn't when one of the Sahaba, when the Prophet ﷺ was they're about to go in a battle, and the Prophet ﷺ poked one of the Sahaba to make him line up. And what did the Sahabi say? It's like, oh, you hurt me. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, what? It's like, deal with it. You're a big guy, you can handle it. No, he didn't say that. He said, okay, you can poke me the same thing. You get even with me right now. He said, no, but your stomach is covered. My stomach was bared. You poked me on the skin. And the Prophet ﷺ removed his clothes, and he showed his stomach for the person to poke him the same way. That takes a lot of emotional stability. If that's not emotionally stable, I mean, what is? But the Prophet ﷺ was comfortable, was very comfortable. He didn't feel like, fine, just do it. I mean, he was just he showed us the example of being stable. So he was implementing that he was fair. So he exposed the skin, and the Sahabi, what did he do? He went and kissed the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, can you imagine? You're about to go to a battlefield. You're about to lose your life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want the last thing to touch your face is the skin of the Prophet. That's exactly what the Sahabi said. So the Sahabi was also stable emotionally. But he used the opportunity for his side. He was not reacting negatively to what the Prophet said. He saw that as an opportunity. I can touch the skin of the Prophet. So he took advantage of that. You don't reach to the level of that Sahabi if you're not emotionally stable. You won't. Because the internal conflict is going to block you from taking advantage of that risk. What's more criticism than being poked in front of all these people? But if that was the Sahabi internally was conflicted, he wouldn't take advantage of that opportunity. But he was stable. He's like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of this for my good. I want to touch the skin of the Prophet. Alayhi salam. If we are not emotionally stable, we're missing out on so many opportunities. And he did make that connection, and the relationship was beautiful with the Prophet. I mean, he maintained a very beautiful relationship. So, did he respond or did she respond? Okay, alhamdulillah. Any other thoughts or questions? The people online are more questioning than, guys, come on. Too cold here or something. Turn off the AC. The brains are not hot enough to bring in thoughts.
Najatul Isma Abdullah asked, Salam Ustaz, how do you rekindle interest and
I'm sorry, how do you reach, sorry?
How do you rekindle interest and kindness in long-term relationships where you are bored and no longer share the same interest? EQ.
How do you rekindle
interest and kindness?
Interest and kindness if the relationship basically is distant, it sounds like.
In a long-term relationship where you are bored and no longer share the same interest.
No, not sharing the same interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. I would say give her my number and to contact me. There's a lot more to know. I can't give an answer like this because it's very specific to a certain situation. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, what's important about sharing interests? Why is that so important? That is a condition to have I'm sorry. A good relationship. So I wanted to understand because I mean my quick answer, my general answer to the you need to start with yourself. But it's not fair for me to say that if I don't know the specifics. So she can reach the office, she can talk to the sheikh, or she can reach to me. I'm more than happy to WhatsApp with her, to do WhatsApp, few messages here and there. But it's really not fair to give her an answer like that. It's really important to know what does she mean. I mean, what is she referencing when there's no more, shared interest? What does that mean? What's important about that? A few things that I would like clarification. I wish that they were here. I would have had more chance to communicate with them. So I'll have to leave it at that for that. Any other questions or thoughts? Anything more online or that's it? Okay. Any last thoughts or questions? Going once? Going twice? Brother, you've been really awfully quiet today. Okay, alhamdulillah. Inshallah, it's a good new thing to you. Going once? Going twice? Okay, jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah.